Well, I'm delighted to welcome long-time friend of the show, Dan Burgess, to the Vintage Rebellion. Dan, how on earth have we not had you on the show in nearly 6 years now?
I don't know. I think I was your first listener, potentially.
I think you were, yeah. But I mean, we've got a lot of guys who've been on the list, and we just sat down one day and we thought, I've got to get Dan Burgess on, and it was Pete turned around and says, "How on earth have we not had Dan Burgess on the show?" I've got no idea,
Yeah,
Pete. It's just...
I think Stuart and Pete interviewed me very quickly at one of the early Father's Froms we went to. So I've been on kind of involved. I did the pantomimes, didn't I? We had a couple of Christmases.
Yes,
You
of
did
course.
those, and a couple of other bits for Stuart in the past. Yeah,
Well, the reason why I've asked you to come on this time is because in some of our group chats, obviously we've been talking about other eras of Star Wars, and you've got an interest in certainly one of the areas that I'm interested in. I think they've dipped my toes into, which is hot toys, and also because of Generation Skywalker unboxing videos as well. So I'd like to cover that towards the end of this interview, if that's fine by
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Excellent.
Cool, sounds good.
Right, well, okay, Dan. So you told me before we started recording that you originated from West London,
Yeah.
and that is poles apart to where I was brought up. So I'd like to go right back to your earliest Star Wars memory then. So how did you first become aware of Star Wars? Was it movies? Was it merchandise? Was it toys? What can you remember from those days?
So I mean, I was born in '79, so I missed Star Wars in the cinema. In fact, I didn't see any of the original trilogy in the cinema until the special editions. But I remember I mean, I would have been young. I'd have been like 3 or 4, and I was at my granddad's house one evening, and as we were leaving, my granddad gave me a VHS cassette, and he said, "Oh, you'll really like this." And it was Star Wars. I think it must have been when it was on the TV, and I think it was first shown was in '82, and gave me this video. And yeah, I remember watching it religiously. I had Star Wars on tap essentially, and I used to watch pretty much every day or every other day. So that was my first introduction to Star Wars. And in terms of the toys, I've got memories not long after that of again being at my nan and granddad's, the same grandparents, and a knock at the door, and this woman came to the door of her son, and he would have been older than me. I mean, it's hard to tell at that age, but I imagine he was 11 or 12. With a cardboard box, and they put this cardboard box down in front of me, and it had a Millennium Falcon, an X-wing, a TIE fighter, an Imperial troop transport, and looking back now, I know that it was 8 out of the first 12, and a couple of others like a Walrus Man and a Luke X-wing. And basically, this kid his mum was making him donate his toys to me, so I had an instant collection of Star Wars toys, and I got the sense he wasn't best pleased handing them over. And I did ask my mum about it not too long ago. I said, "Do you remember when I got all those Star Wars toys?" She said, "Oh yeah, that was your nan's manager at Ealing Council." So yeah, it wasn't a figment of my imagination. It definitely happened.
Well, how come I didn't have friends like that? What is going on? But
Yeah,
with you being younger than Dan, we're around about the same age, but you look a lot older.
yeah, right.
What what were your parents' view on when you decided you wanted to start, collecting Star Wars toys? Because certainly when I think back, it was very much, oh, Star Wars, isn't that not a bit old? Shouldn't you be into He-Man now? Shouldn't you be into Transformers now? Because they're the new current things, and they kept pushing those things on me, thinking that Star Wars was for the older kids, or certainly kids of the previous year.
Yeah, not really. I mean, my mum and dad, my mum and dad are quite young, so they had me when they were 20, so they would have still been early 20s. And my mum still tells me now, when she saw Star Wars in 1977 in the cinema, she would have been 18, 19, or it would have been 78 when it came out. But she'd seen it and she really liked it, so they almost encouraged it. And, that wasn't the end of it, really. I mean, I was getting Star Wars bought for me at Christmas and birthdays for the next few years after that. I mean, obviously, eventually it drifted off and I got into my He-Man and Transformers and everything else that came after, but I always had those Star Wars toys floating around.
So why do you think those other toy lines and didn't really stick with you as much?
I think it's probably to do with the quality of the media as well. I think in terms of the cartoons and stuff, you go back and watch them now and they don't hold up. They're great nostalgic value, and it's great watching the intros and stuff on YouTube, but you wouldn't sit down necessarily and watch an episode of He-Man now and get the same appreciation you had when you were 6 years old or whatever old I'd have been.
That's definitely true. Now,
Yeah.
from obviously reading Craig Stevens' book and various other things, the idea of London for me as a child is completely different to the reality that I got. So
Yeah.
down in London, department stores, whether it's Hamleys or I don't know,
Yeah.
if Harrods was near you, what was the buzz and what were the toy displays like at Christmas, or were you too late for all of that?
The one memory I do have, and I mentioned one of the first times I went to a department store was with my gran. It was called Daniel's, and it's in West Ealing. And I do remember, like you see a lot of people posting photos on Facebook of back in the day of the kind of the wall of the mint on cards and all of the vehicles and everything. And in the in the department store they had the wall of figures and mint on cards, and I walked up and plucked off a Han Hoth to go with my Luke Hoth and Tauntaun that I already had at home. But that was my first memory of seeing Star Wars in the shops.
Do you think you did that from looking at the back of the card backs and working out what figures you need? Because certainly as a child, I remember I went to see Darth Vader on the Palatoy tour.
Yeah.
And I was crushed when I found out it wasn't David Prowse, and I only found that out about 4 or 5 years ago, and I was absolutely crushed. I was convinced it was him. But I remember being in the queue, and I picked up Ben Kenobi from like the wall of display of figures, and it was at a Tesco or a Shopping City, and I want to say it was Shopping City actually, which was owned by Tesco.
Right.
And I had this Ben Kenobi in my hand as I went to see Darth Vader, and my mother made us put it back because she didn't think it was cool enough. And she was like, you can't go and see Darth Vader with that. So I actually had to pick up a Darth Vader.
Right.
So I mustn't have had one because there's no way on earth she would have allowed us to buy two. So I picked up a Darth Vader. And I remember when I got to see Darth Vader, I ruffled my hair, because he saw me action figure, so he was pleased. So that memory stuck with me. But why I picked a Ben Kenobi, I've got no idea. So did you did you actually look at the card backs, and did you have a look and go, right, okay, I've got the Luke Hoth, so I now need the Han Hoth to go with that? Were you actually like that as a child?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was more because I remember getting the Tauntaun for a birthday.
Oh wow!
And it was a split belly one, and I'm pretty sure I haven't got it in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that's got Han on the box with Luke with his head or feet popping out of the bottom of the Tauntaun. So I think it was probably more to do with that than the card backs. Although I did have my card backs we had like me and my brother shared a bedroom, and we had a chest of drawers with like a lid that lifted up like an old school desk at the top of it, and we used to have bits and pieces in there, and I used to keep the card backs in there. Oh, wow. So yeah, I was definitely referencing, and when I look back now, and some of the choices I've made today collecting was informed by some of that. So a couple of figures that I never saw as a child on the pegs was a Luke Bespin and a Han Bespin, and I always remember looking on the card back thinking I need those, but never actually saw them out in the wild.
Wow, what to me, I wish I had that memory from back then, because I other than that Darth Vader, I don't think I actually personally chose any Star Wars figure. The rest all came at birthdays and Christmas for me.
Yeah.
So somebody must have been keeping track of them, because I never got a double ever. A double would have been wasted money. You can't have another 99p. What you're playing at?
Yeah, I remember buying a Yoda in the store one time. I think that was in South Harrow. But everything, like you say, everything else I got was gifted to me. It was birthdays and Christmases, and you didn't tend to get toys in between then. Yeah, they're the only two purchases I remember making in person. Everything else was wrapped up under a Christmas tree or next to a birthday cake.
So at some point then your collection has it's petered out. You've possibly given it away to others, such as what happened to you, and you come back into it as an adult collector. So can you describe that moment, and how did you feel coming back into it?
Yeah, so I suppose I was always conscious of Star Wars, and it never really went away. I mean, my toys hung about for years, and then my brothers had them, and my youngest brother's 7 years younger than me, so he was playing with those for a long time. So that they were always there, and I was definitely conscious that Star Wars was something that I wanted to collect. I just couldn't find it, and when I hear people talking now about toy shows and all the things that were going on in the early 90s even, it was just completely went by me. I remember being in sixth form, so it would have been about 95, something like that, 95, 96, and I took in a copy of Return of the Jedi. It's in my bag for some reason, I don't know why, and we had a careers teacher called Mr. Franklin, and we were we had a free period, so we was in his room, he had a TV, so me and a couple of mates set up the video, and we were watching Return of the Jedi, as sixth formers do. And he came in halfway through and went, "Oh, watching Return of the Jedi," and got talking to him. And I'd love to find him now, because it turned out that he was going round all of the local toy shops and hoovering up all of the mint on cards and was buying all of the figures. He's going, "Oh yeah, I've got all of them. I've got everything. I've got everything on every card back." And I didn't have a clue about card backs then. I was like, "Oh right, okay." And that kind of piqued my interest a little bit, and I did start to look on places. I don't know if you get Loot outside of London. Do you remember Loot?
Nope.
The classifieds. So it used to be like you just go in a newsagent to pay £1 for it, and you could basically people paid to advertise. So it's kind of like Facebook in the form of a newspaper of people selling stuff. And I'd always be in there looking for Star Wars, and I did buy a couple of lots up. So I remember going to one guy's house and picking up an old Falcon and a Slave One and a couple of other bits and pieces, but nothing mint in box or anything like that. And if I had a bit more foresight, I'd have probably put an ad up myself and I'd have probably had more success. But I think by that stage I was more interested in girls and Saturday nights out and drink and stuff. So it kind of went away a little bit. So it wasn't until probably 2000, after the Phantom Menace had came out, and there was a memorabilia, they have memorabilia at NEC.
Yeah.
There was at Sandown, it's a Barry Potter toy fair, but for some reason this particular one, I don't know what the history is, but it was tagged as a memorabilia event, and Ray Park was going to be there autographing. So I thought, oh great, I'm going to go down there and get an autograph. And I don't know if you've been to Sandown, Rich, but it's in the race course, and it's a big open area, and there's toy stalls everywhere. I mean, you go there now and they've still got, the guys selling train sets and toys and everything else. And Jim Stevenson was there with a stall and all the characters from back then. And it had been the first time I'd been exposed to that. And there was mint on cards everywhere. I mean, I think at the time I was still on, not great wages. I think I was on about 18 grand a year. So I didn't have huge amounts to go and spend on this kind of stuff. I think I had like 50 quid in my pocket for the day. But I have memories of them opening up like shipping containers of Star Wars toys and were selling them. And it was like 50 quid for a hand bez bin, 50 quid for this, 80 quid for that. And it was kind of out of my reach at that time. I'd just come for a Ray Park autograph. But I did end up buying Darth Vader, which had the tip snapped off the saber, but I didn't even realize that was a thing then, and a AT-AT driver for a £5. So I've got my first two figures. So that kind of set me off. And then eBay was obviously coming around at that time, and I got heavily into eBay and started buying figures up. And because obviously I knew I was going to do this, I was thinking about it the other day, and it's amazing how much eBay's changed in the last 20 odd years. And back then you had to send a postal order off because there wasn't PayPal or a check, and you'd have to wait for the person at the other end to cash that in before they send you your stuff back. And looking at the way people used to format their auctions back then, so you had like, people would say, oh, this is a C9 plus figure. Everything seemed to have a C attached to it, so it was their gradient essentially of the figure. But there was definitely a lot of repro back even then as well. So, people were describing it as 100% original, and then this one's a repro and that's a repro. So that's been going on for a long time. But I kind of got through probably most of the figures. I think by the time I'd finished collecting my loose around 2007, I had all of the figures bar 5 of the last 17. So I think I needed an A-Wing pilot, R2 pop-up, and a Luke poncho and a couple of the Ewoks, but I'd got the lot by 2007.
Wow, that's excellent. So what were your first thoughts of the prices then? Because certainly back in 1999, 2000, if I saw a card, I figure 50 quid, I'd be thinking, how much?
I know, yeah, that's what I thought, and it kind of put me off a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it put me off for the longest time, really. It wasn't really until probably 7 or 8 years ago since I started collecting mint on cards. But yeah, it was beyond my reach at that time, and it sounds cheap now, but yeah, you take into account inflation, and then what you're earning as when you're in your early 20s, it's it kind of makes sense.
Absolutely.
Versus what you're earning now. But it was the prices back then of loose figures, I think I had in my head I'd never pay more than £10 for a figure. So I think until I got to the last 17, I don't think I paid more than a tenner for any individual figure.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's fantastic. That right now, Dan, we've known each other for a lot of years now, and if somebody had asked me to describe your collection, I would have said it probably focuses more on Empire Strikes Back than not. But you've sent me some photographs, and me George just dropped it how much I didn't know. So we'll just start with Empire Strikes Back first, because you've got some. You've got some amazing cards and some fantastic condition ones in there. Is that your favourite movie, and have you purposely started hunting down the Empire Strikes Back cards? And if so, what was your method and what were you going for?
I think, it started off, I kind of wanted to have a focus, because when I joined SWF UK in 2014, I'd already bought a couple of MOCs by then, or mint on cards. And I started buying stuff on SWF UK, and I think I got a Meccano Jawa, then I got Return of the Jedi, Darth Vader, and I started to look at what other people were doing, and it seemed to be, people had focuses, and it hadn't really been something that I'd considered before. So I just really sat down and thought about what is it I actually want to achieve with this, because I was kind of invested and I was really excited and I wanted to start buying stuff, but I knew it would kind of it could get out of hand. So I decided to, originally I was going to do an Empire run of just the Empire characters, so any of the characters on any of the card backs that appeared in Empire, but then I like the uniformity of the Empire logo.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went out all out, and the reason it was Empire for me is it is my favorite movie. I think up until the age of like 11 or 12, it had been the movie that I'd seen the least. I'd seen, I had Star Wars on video. My dad I think he'd hired Empire one time, and I'd seen it that one time. I'd seen it, and then he brought Return of the Jedi home on a pirated version at some point as well. And we had it for the weekend, so I watched it to death that weekend. I think we watched it three times in a single weekend. So I knew that movie well. I felt I did, anyways. So Empire, when I really came back to it, when I think it was on the TV in like '89 or '90, and again taped it off the TV because Mum and Dad didn't like buying films from out of the video shop. We would buy it, we'd record them on the TV, and just watched it to death, and it must have imprinted on me. I was in that, I suppose, that stroppy teenager phase, and it's quite a dark movie, and it must have just imprinted on me. So it's to this day my favorite Star Wars film, and I just thought, well, why not start there? And there was a number of figures in there that I didn't have growing up that I really wanted, so I thought, right, I'm gonna go after those. And I think originally it started off quite slow, and then I realized that over the years I'd built up a lot of other memorabilia that I'd collected outside of Star Wars. So a lot of He-Man, Transformers, a lot of modern Star Wars as well. And I just started basically selling that to pay for my vintage. And then I got to know people like Ian, a few of you guys on the forums and stuff. And it was a breeze, really. When I think back now, I think I collected everything that I'd set out to on Empire originally within 18 months.
Wow.
I had like 45 different card backs of Empire cards. I had a few of the first 12 on Empire cards because I thought, right, if it was Empire Strikes Back, I want it on an Empire card. So I had like Darth Vader. I'm just looking up at the shelves now, actually. Who else did I have? Stormtrooper, Obi-Wan, because he's in it as a ghost. Luke X-Wing, obviously he's in it, etc. So any of the figures that appeared in Empire Strikes Back, that was on an Empire Strikes Back card back, I went and got them. So I think by 2016 I'd had the whole run of all of them, and I've got the variation photographs as well. So I think Leia Besbin has got 2 different photo arts, and Luke Besbin as well. So I had the whole shooting match, and I've been tweaking it since then. I really enjoy looking at it. I'm looking up at it now, but I'll continuously upgrade. There's a few that I'm not particularly happy with, and I'll just keep trading it up. And yeah, it's been hard going recently. The prices have gone a bit north, to say the least. So I've slowed down a little bit. But up until probably, even up till I think December 2019, we went to the last farthest from. I was still picking up bits and pieces and then selling on the ones I've upgraded from.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good plan. And I think I have regrets back when Star Wars Film UK was in its heyday, and that there were a lot of Jedi carded figures that could be had for £30-40 mark.
Yeah.
And I didn't buy enough of them. I didn't buy anywhere near enough because logically I think probably when you've completed something like the Empire Strikes Back one, you have to look at the first 21, or you have to look at Jedi. And the Jedi ones would have been far cheaper. And is that the way you went, or did you go back to the Star Wars cards?
No, I went straight. Well, I think it was probably a bit of a mix. The Jedi stuff started at farthest from, and I did start to pick up. I think I picked up like a 9 and a Admiral Akbar with real nice clear bubbles. I think it was from Andy X-Wing. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I picked them up for him, and then I just thought, oh well, I want to keep on collecting, so I'm going to carry on buying the rest. But I was surprised because I made a post, and I can't remember if it was on the forum. There was the cheap mint on cards. Fred wasn't there. I think mint on cards for under 50 quid or something like that, wasn't it? And I think it was around 2016, and I'd bought over the course of like 6 months. I must have bought 15 to 20 mint on cards. Jedi ones, and I think I worked out I paid an average of like £22 for each one.
Wow.
And it was just through like having smart searches on eBay. People like Nick Rayner, I think one of the fathers from that time, bought kind of his kind of the mint on cards he'd had laying about, and was knocking them out for like 10-20 quid each. So I was able to amass the Jedi collection relatively cheaply, initially, and then I've still got some of those now. And he was selling them off cheap, but I think they look really good. They've got yellow bubbles, but what are you going to do? They're going to go yellow, so they look good. Yeah.
But your Star Wars cards are fantastic because you haven't went the traditional route. So you for example you mentioned the did you say the Meccano Jawa, and you've got a Meccano Ben Kenobi as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
But I think you've got some others in a different license as well, haven't you?
Yeah. So I've got a Harbour
Vader.
Darth Vader, or Darth Fenner as he's known on the card. The Obi-Wan. I've got a 12-back 3PO, just a Kenner one. I've got. I suppose the thinking was on that. I just wanted to represent some of the foreign licenses and just get different examples of those. Not necessarily go after a full run of each license or each card back, or keep it uniform in that way. Just so, I suppose the way that I look at my collection, it's kind of, if someone came in here now who didn't know anything about Star Wars, I could almost tell the narrative of collecting and have examples of each thing. So like I've got, I think my Snaggletooth's got a blaster error. I think he's got an Imperial blaster rather than a Smuggler's blaster and things like that. And I've got examples of a Clipper, and I've got examples of Palatoy and Glassleet, and just to be able to tell that narrative. And I've got the early bird certificate, just so you could almost walk someone through and tell them that story, because I think it is an interesting story. And if anyone was, interested enough to come in and ask the questions, I'd like to think I'd be able to show them what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I've noticed as well that you mentioned the early bird certificate, so you're not strictly sticking to UK licenses, which some collectors do in the UK.
Yeah.
But you've also went down the die-cast route as well. But I don't see any mini rigs and ships and things like that. Did those not interest you, or did you?
Yeah, I just don't have. I've got them all in the loft. So
right.
I've got a few ships and play sets on display. It's just it's about room at the minute, and I'm trying to figure out how to make some more space. So I've got plans in my head. I've just got to persuade the other half that they're good ideas.
Yes, been there, done that. Now, you've also got quite what I'm going to call an eclectic mix of non-action figure related items. So, I mean, the Intergalactic Passport, for example, I mean, that's always going to get a thumbs up for me, because I really love that. So, what do you do when you go down that route, when you're looking at your Helix products and your other stuff? What's your collecting idea about that? Do you just pick things up at the right time, or are you just willy-nilly?
Yeah, pretty much so. They're just generally save searches on eBay, all different combinations of words, and occasionally something will pop up, or someone will put something on the Beyond the Toys page on Facebook, and I'll grab it up. I'm not one of these people who need every single version of every single item and to have those runs. I haven't got that OCD in that respect. It's like a figure focus. I haven't got a figure focus, but I think what I've got, I just like to look at it, because it's just everything piled into little little spaces. And I mean, I don't know what I'll do with it eventually. I enjoy looking at it at the moment, but maybe I will get a focus eventually and use that as collateral to pay for a focus. But I'm just happy picking up bits
I noticed
and pieces
you've grouped them together, so you've got like a Star Wars shelf, with your soaps and your pencil cases.
Yeah.
What's that Japanese item? I don't recognise that. Is it a badge or something you've got sealed on card?
Yeah, it's a badge. I think I picked it up on eBay back, I think it was like October time. I'm just looking at it now. I don't even know what license it is. It's definitely 100% Japanese. Yeah, it's an R2 and 3PO badge still in its card. I picked it up for, I think it was like a tenner on eBay. Just a random find.
And I'm looking at your Empire items now. So you've got, for example, like the pencil toppers. Now the pencil toppers are cheap as chips. They're easy to get a hold of, but you haven't collected the rest of them. So what's the idea about how you collect things? Is it just you've got to be in the right place and you're not actively hunting them?
To a degree. I think if I get to a certain level with it and I've picked enough of them up, I'll go after the others. I mean, the pencil toppers for me, the ones that I've got are the ones that are kind of reminiscent of the Kenner figures. So you've got they're like miniaturized versions of those. So they're really I think I've got all of those ones. Or maybe you can tell me otherwise. But I've got the R2, the Vader, Yoda, Chewie, Han Hoth, and Luke X-wing. So I think they're the primary the Empire ones, if I'm not mistaken. But I've got a few of the Jedi, the Jedi ones, but I've not gone all out. I mean, I've got like an Emperor's Royal Guard and an Admiral Akbar, but not going all out on completing runs on those or anything like that. Just a bit of fun, really,
Well,
to pass the time
exactly,
between
that's the way
finding
I've
some
viewed it as
toys.
well. I mean, you take somebody like Grant, for example, who is very, educational and studious about all these kind of things. And I do get that. I totally
Yeah.
get that. I get why somebody would go right down that line and try to, understand them and appreciate them, etc., etc. But I was the same as you. I would just be picking them up for a couple of pounds, £10 here and there and everywhere, and it was keeping the bug going for me.
I think that's been, I mean, when we look back, I mean, the last, I don't want to dwell on, something that's as depressing as a pandemic, but it has, obviously, my office is my collecting room. So I've spent a lot of time in here in the last 12 months, and it has made me, how good is the display, and what else do I need to do? Do I need to pull my finger out, clean the shelves and everything else, and put extra shelves up? And so you do start to think about all that, and then you do look at this, the beyond the toy stuff, and it has been a little bit of a distraction in the past, but I've certainly appreciated it a lot more than I have. And things like the metal tins, the pencil, the metal pencil cases and stuff like that. I've got a desire to go after some of that stuff now. I think they do the money banks and things like that. I think are they called the star boxes or something? Yeah, so I might go down that route and pick some of those up.
Dan, I'm aware that you work in retail, and you don't work on the on the customer front. I get that, but
Yeah.
one of the things I've been interested in a lot is, for those who work in retail, is, have they ever seen anything such as what Star Wars was like when they came out in the the late 70s, early 80s? Now, I'm not just talking about products on the shelves, because that's just part of it. You've got your whole accounts department, you've got stock take, you've got inventory, you've got deliveries arriving, you've got paperwork coming out your ears. Can you even begin to conceive how difficult that must have been, and certainly in an age before they had computers?
Yeah, I can't. I mean, when you look at the technology today, and what's achieved every day, in terms of home deliveries and just pure, moving stock around, not just the country, around the world. I mean, keeping track of that stuff when it was coming over on a boat from China or Hong Kong to over to Colville to package it ready to go out to all the stores. It just, yeah, I can't imagine what it was like. It must have been absolutely horrendous working in that. Very stressful, I imagine. It's stressful now at the best of times, just working in retail, like, in terms of managing logistics. But yeah, back then, I mean, when I started working in '97, I worked for P&O on their freight side in the UK, delivering just goods around. And we didn't have the technology even back then that we've got now. I don't think we had the internet. We were still using fax machines, and that was a nightmare. I mean, you take it back, peel back another couple of layers off of that, another decade off of that, and yeah, and having something that was as sought after as that, yeah, it must have been an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have somebody on the show who actually worked in, I don't know, just say in procurement or something like that, just to describe what it was like behind, you think those guys had a tough sticking Carter figures on the shelf? They had nothing compared to what we had. That's what I would love to find out more about that.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, once something starts moving as quickly as that product probably did, you can only imagine that it did. As looking at the numbers that were sold, that it almost becomes a flow then. And then, yeah, I imagine initially there was people crying out to get the product, and they're all fighting over who's going to get the first shipments and all the rest of it. But I imagine once it gets going and they've got the supply chain stable, it would have been yeah, a lot reasonable. They would have probably had spikes where you saw, a new movie coming out, or a video release, or just a promotion, or But yeah, I imagine they would have got into the flow of it quite quickly. It would have been a nightmare otherwise.
A living nightmare, yeah, absolutely. So obviously you mentioned, the Phantom Menace and things, piquing your interest, which it did for a lot of people. Did you go down the EU at all pre that, or gaming side of it? What kept your interest going?
So I think Heir to the Empire was something that I jumped on immediately. I saw it I didn't even know it was coming out. That's how, no internet back then. And I was out shopping with my mum and dad in a shop called Macros. It's like a wholesaler we used to go to every so often. And yeah, I saw that. I was like, Dad, can I have this? And normally he says no, but I think because it was a book, he bought it for me. And I absolutely devoured it. It's like, wow, this is the sequel to Return of the Jedi. And then I remember the Dark Horse comics coming out. And I've recently done something over on Generation Skywalker on a blog about micro machines. Wasn't the biggest fan of those, I'll be honest, but everyone seemed to buy them for me just because they knew I liked Star Wars. So I ended up with a ton of micro machines, and the video games for sure. Super Star Wars on the Super Nintendo. I was all over that, and yeah, all through the '90s really. I was just just the games, Shadows of the Empire. I was picking up, I think in '96 that the UK version of Star Wars Insider started, so I was buying that every week. So I was heavily invested in it back then. I just couldn't get my arse out of bed early enough in the morning to get to a boot sale to buy any vintage.
And you started collecting the modern figures as well, because I believe you've got a real keen interest in certainly the more recent ones.
Yeah, I think back there I wasn't. I mean, we've spoken about it again on the modern show we do on Generation Skywalker. I wasn't at all taken with the Power of the Force or the Phantom Menace line. I never you've got all these videos of people queuing up outside Toys R Us and filling shopping trolleys full of stuff. I wasn't one of those guys. I love Star Wars as much as I've ever loved Star Wars back then, but I looked at those Power of the Force figures and I was like, nope, I'm not even touching him. I think I got a Darth Vader because he was quite bulky and looked like he did on pretty similar to what he did in the movies, but the rest of them, yeah, I passed them by, and I hated the packaging as well. I detest those green card backs, and I don't even really like the Phantom Menace ones. I was so looking forward to them releasing them on vintage card backs. I was so excited and just so disappointed when I saw the final product.
So obviously, you brought that up there, then. So are you really into the retro collection then?
I haven't gone back and bought any of the figures that have already been released. I picked up the Tarkin in the Death Star board game, and I have recently got the Mandalorian ones. I've got them, I think, last Thursday or Friday, so I've got those in hand now as well.
Yeah, awesome. I did actually, and the only reason why I did it was I wouldn't have got them if they weren't in Asda. I wouldn't have done it. But obviously, when you're shopping and you see them on a shelf. And even today I saw Orlando in Morrison's like marked down like £3 or something. It was only one line there, and I thought, you can't not buy them. They've definitely targeted them. It men and women going shopping in the 40s. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it is a nice feeling to seeing them. I mean, it looks great. I mean, I think it was Asda's as well. I was in there back in the summer, and I wasn't even looking for them, and I walked by and I saw Darth Vader, and I was like, oh, I'm going to buy it. And I did. I think they were marked down as well, so I didn't pay full price for it. But yeah, it's good to see them. I mean, the Mandalorian ones, that I think they're quite a really good tribute to the line, and it is interesting to see what they do to carry it on. But I just wish they'd done it 20 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a big miss, isn't it? Because we all had stories in our head, all of us. But better late than never. So obviously there are other things that I know you enjoy, and we've talked about this a few times. Hot toys. So what have you got at Hot Toys at the moment? And we'll have a little chat about them, because to me, I'm at the stage now where I'm thinking that the carded prices are so ridiculous, and the Hot Toys items are just, yes, they're expensive. I'm going to say they are expensive without doubt they are, but they're so good quality that I think you more than get your value worth in them. And I don't know about you, but I've got a feeling they're going to hold the price. So what have you got in Hot Toys wise, and what do you think of them?
Yeah, I think I was the same as you. I was kind of like, I know they're too expensive, and I've been saying it for years. So I listened, as well as I've always followed modern. I haven't necessarily, I've picked up a few Black Series and bits and pieces over the years, but I've never really focused in on it. But I've kept my finger on the pulse, and vintage has been my primary focus. But I knew what was going on. I knew these Hot Toys things were there, and I'd go into places like Forbidden Planet and their big displays, and I'd look at the prices and go, I don't want to buy it. I can go and buy a mint on card or 2 mint on cards for the price of those. But with the prices going up in the last 12 months the way they have, it's just untenable. It's not something. I mean, my hope is that the bubble bursts and price fall, but it's not something that I haven't bought any vintage now. The last thing that I bought toy wise was probably this time last year at is it the C&T auction?
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
I bought a Palatoy die-cast Star Destroyer, real nice. Yeah, I've got it in a nice plastic case now. But yeah, I paid over £300 for that, and everyone's telling me it was a good price, but it still hurt a little bit. And I was like, oh, is this the way it's going to carry on going? So I was doing Generation Skywalker the modern way. I've been doing that for a couple of months, and Stuart and then Grant started to hassle me to start buying Hot Toys, and I put myself down for a few. So I've got the Darth Vader Empire Strikes Back 40th anniversary, the Leia Hoth, which is just absolutely brilliant. And a couple of weeks ago, I got the Boba Fett as well, the 40th anniversary one of that for Empire. And I suppose they're just a different level. There's just nothing like them out there. And when you get one in hand, they're amazing. I mean, I've taken some photos. We've been sharing them around of that between me and Stu, and that just perspective photos of the Boba Fett from a door threat, and it looks like Boba Fett standing in my door. It's just brilliant. The stitching on the clothing, the attention to detail is just superb.
Absolutely. I mean, I like the Emperor as well God. I think the Emperor as well God's absolutely outstanding. I'm just at that point now where I know if I buy one, it'll increase very quickly.
Yeah. I think that's the way that I was talking about reorganising my collecting room, and I've already got plans to get a couple of extra Deltoffs in it, to be honest with you. But they, I suppose the good thing about them is in the way they come out. They're not, although Stuart's got a crazy amount on pre-order. If you're sensible, I think you can manage it. So at one time, I think I had 4 on pre-order. I've had 2 of those so far. I've got another 2 on pre-order, and I think you can pay them in installments as well. It's not like you've got to stump up the cash up front, and they're not coming out every single week. So I think if you're sensible and you're picky, I mean, in my mind at the minute, there's another 10 series Disney are planning to produce in the next few years. You know, even if half of those series I like, then if I just said, right, I'm just going to buy one from each series and kind of build it up that way and see how it goes. I mean, if the prices fall out of vintage in the next couple of years, I might have a different strategy because I might be going back to vintage. But yeah, it's just vintage is just too much at the minute for me in terms of prices.
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, you know, unfortunately, I'm still stuck in the Star Wars Formula Cave mindset. So I remember refusing to pay £20 for a saber for R2 pop up, and part of me now is kicking myself thinking, what on earth am I thinking? And you know, I guess you're the same. Somebody will contact you and say, how much do you think this is worth? And I'll name a price, and I'm missing a zero, and I'm like, well, when did that happen? You know, how on earth? And it's just for me now, I do have the same buzz. I mean, it's been well over a year since I've purchased anything vintage, and I do have the same buzz, and I do have the same interest. But it's to me now, I'm looking at it and thinking, well, for that, I can actually get 2 Hot Toys items, and that's kind of what I'm gripping with. And what I've done is I've cheekily. Because I've moved house, I've cheekily diverted back down to the EU. So I thought, well, there's me keep going. I'm still getting Dark Horse comics, and I'm still getting things that I've missed because there was a hell of a lot of them out.
Yeah.
And even though I've got over 1,000 comics and books, I'm still missing a fair few. So I'm actually going down that route. But at some point, I'm going to finish that, and then I'm going to get really stuck. The Hot Toys items are amazing. Do you follow any of the Hot Toys podcasts?
Yeah, 6 Hour Scavengers is the
Chris Levy,
they're really good, and I think they're in the same kind of predicament as we are in terms of how far down this do you go. I mean, they've got good philosophies on there around, you know, if you do buy a hot toy and you do regret it, the chances are you can probably sell it and get the money back to buy another one. And if you buy the right ones, you could, you know, sell it and buy 2 more hot toys with what you make from it. So the prices do go up quite rapidly once they sell out. A lot of them do get re-releases, but some of them don't. So I think one that has recently got a re-release is the Shore Trooper from Rogue One. And there's different versions of it, but the one that came out originally, there wasn't much of an uptake on it. And I think what they do with these hot toys is, and I don't know, this is just my feeling anyways, is they'll look to see the interest when they're put up for pre-order and then make a decision on how many they're going to produce. And there wasn't a lot for that Rogue One Shore Trooper, and it's become one now that eventually, I think before the new ones got announced, went up to like 800 quid you could sell it for. Is that much flex in it. Even the Leia Hoth that I picked up, and I did buy that on the secondary market. I think I paid £300 for it. It was originally 200. If you look at them on eBay now, I got that a couple of months ago. They're going for £400+ now. So there's a lot of life in them, and if you wanted to play the game with them, you could buy and sell and trade and you know, buy more with the money that you make.
Absolutely. It sounds like a whole different collecting, you know, genre there, you know, completely different.
Yeah. It's definitely worth listening to that podcast. I mean, I think Stuart interviewed the guy off of there back at the start of Generation Skywalker, and that put me on to the podcast, and I've been listening to it now for the last few months, and it's very interesting. It's definitely a psychology to collecting hot toys.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you've talked a bit about Generation Skywalker. So how did that come about? And I mean, I know you do some of the unboxing videos, and we've watched quite a few of those. And but you've mentioned your the blog, Micro Machines blog. You know, what else have you done on Generation Skywalker? And most importantly, are you enjoying it?
Yeah, so we started. I think this well, it was I think it's last February we started out, and Stuart got hold of me. I think it was when we was at Farthest From, the last Farthest From, in December 2019, and he said to me, "We're starting a new a podcast up, and I really want you to be part of it." I thought he was asking me on to present a vintage show, and it was a modern one, so I was a little bit disappointed, to be honest with you, to start with. I did say this to him, but it was so well timed with everything that's going on at the moment. It's been a real distraction from all of that, and it's been really good fun. And I've never I mean, in my job, I do a lot of presenting and stuff in terms of standing up in front of a room full of people and going through a PowerPoint. But in terms of being on a show like that, it is new to me. And even writing a blog, I don't think I've really done any sort of creative writing since I was in high school. So it's been different, and it's yeah, and I think I've learned a lot. I mean, even recording the videos when you sat in your kitchen with a GoPro strapped to your head, you feel a bit of a clown. But so it's kind of getting over some of that, and I've done a couple recently. I don't think they're up yet. I've got my son involved in stuff like that, so it's been good fun, and it's been educational as well. I mean, looking back over some of the stuff that happened in the 90s, I think I've been listening to you guys and reading on Facebook about vintage for years now. To get back into some of the stuff that came after that, early after that, like Micro Machines and what went on there with Kenner, and how did Galoob get the license when Kenner had the license to produce all of the Star Wars toys? And it turns out someone at Hasbro, when they bought Kenner, forgot to send some money to George Lucas and lost the license. And that's the bit of the story that doesn't get told. We normally get told up to the bit where Kenner wins the license, and they're showered in glory and produced all the toys. But there was a little bit of a sad end to that story.
So I was going to move on to that now. So do you have a new appreciation for things like Galoob based on the research and things that you've been conducting over the last 2 years?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely, I mean, I've bought some Micro Machines recently, just the little free packs, and Grant's, Grant's like, he's quite philosophical about this kind of stuff, and he's been waxing lyrical about the early 90s and talking about having a cabinet about his collecting journey and stuff. So I definitely want to put something together like that myself, that I've got vintage coming out my ears, but to have a section that says, in between vintage and where we are today, that all these other things happened as well. So just having a little display of bits and pieces and all the different shows I went to in that time, and copies of VHS cassettes and stuff, that just, again, to tell that story, that journey.
Awesome. So Dan, we knew each other from things like Farthest From and celebrations and things like that. So I've noticed that I'm looking at one of your photos here. You've got some fan club badges and things. So how important for you is the fan community versus before you went to Farthest From for the first time, or before you went to Memorabilia and started interacting with others? What is the big difference?
I think I don't want to sound like a sado, right? But when I was growing up, I was the only Star Wars fan, certainly after a certain age, and it wasn't, you get beaten up by all accounts if you spoke about Star Wars. But but it wasn't something that I kind of advertised. It was always, you sit in a classroom daydreaming. It's always, Star Wars was always in the back of my mind, and I was always, watching it and thinking about it and playing with toys, but it was something I didn't really share with many other people after a certain age. And my mum and dad knew I was a Star Wars fan, and my brothers and stuff like that, and I was a little bit embarrassed of it, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? But when you get into that collecting community, it's just dealing with like-minded people, and I've probably made more friends probably in the first couple of years of getting joining the forums than I probably have since I left school. You make your friends at school and you have a few work colleagues and stuff like that, but people that I can genuinely call mates and friends, they're few and far between. And I think I've got more out of that than anything material from collecting. It sounds a little bit soppy, doesn't it? But it's true, isn't it? I mean, if you sold all your collection tomorrow, you'd still have those friends there, right? I mean, in terms of when I started collecting, like in the 2000s, when I was talking back then and stuff about eBay and things, I think Rebel Scum was around then, and I was signed up on Rebel Scum, but I never ever posted once. I wish I had and got involved a bit more then. But yeah, I still went through all of that time. I was just solitary, confined, like collecting and learning, just through reading on the forums and stuff. So learning about the variants, learning about repro weapons, even back then. And it's quite funny that when I came back to collecting and I went through my loose figures, I think something like 10% of them still had repro weapons, even though I tried to be careful. But it just goes to show you back then, these repro weapons ain't a recent event. They've been around for ages.
So, I mean, you obviously have travelled, to Chicago, and we've been, all over the place. Is that still as easy to do now that you've got your own family and you're obviously busy with work and that? Do you think we've actually hit the limit of that, or can you see it continuing again for the next 5-10 years, no problem?
I think obviously my boy is 9 now, so I mean it doesn't help when they schedule these things in the middle of August. So that's a problem. But if Chicago just felt absolutely perfect for me. It was just before Easter, so I took a few days off work, flew out, flew back, and then I think I ended up having a 2-week break. So the first 5 days was in Chicago, flowed straight into Easter with the school holidays, so that fitted perfectly. But this next one in August, it's not gonna pan out for me. I mean, if maybe when the boy's a bit older, I can probably bring him with me. But I found before that when I go to things like that, if I take someone with me who's not as into it, you're kind of always worried about them and whether they're enjoying it. But the great thing about Chicago was it was just us. It was just it was full on, and I could do what I wanted and go where I wanted, and and it was if we broke apart and went off and did our own thing, we'd meet up again at the end of it, and you didn't have to worry about it.
I've got tickets for Anaheim, but I'm starting to obviously because I've moved house now and I started a new relationship. I'm at the same at you, where she's kind of said, well, I can come, but I'll be on the beach and doing whatever else, and I'm thinking, you do realise I won't see you for 5 days. It's kind of that thing. It's probably getting too much now, isn't it?
I wouldn't. I mean, my wife's brilliant. I mean, she's been to Farthest From. She came with us, and she'd be up for coming again. I mean, my wedding, I got married at Pinewood, and she doesn't. I wouldn't say she encourages it, but she tolerates it. I mean, I had Stormtroopers and Darth Vader at my wedding, and we had all kinds of like little bits of Star Wars stuff throughout the wedding. But she's really good like that. She lets me get on with it, bless her. And doesn't give me too much grief.
So, have you got any plans of going to Echo Live then in August?
Echo Live is a no. I'm away that week, unfortunately. But as soon as hopefully the Farthest From, I think Dave's going to hopefully announce something for the sometime this year. But if the dates fall right, it's always about the dates. My son doesn't live with me, so I have him every other weekend. So when they fall on the odd weekends when he's not with me, then happy days, I'll be there. But he's not quite old enough yet to go out drinking with us, so we've got to wait a few more years for that.
Won't be too much longer though.
No.
So, Dan, where do you see yourself going then over the next 2 or 3 years? I mean, are you just sitting and watching and picking up pieces as and when they come, or do you think this bubble's coming soon?
I hope so. I mean, I say hope so. It doesn't help the people that I get it. The people that are out there that are kind of going gangbusters with this stuff. They've probably been sat at home for 12 months and they've been staring at their collections with gaps in it and trying to fill them. But I mean, before Christmas last year, before this started, to December 2019, there was that prop store auction. I don't know if you watched that and I felt that there was a significant drop in prices on that auction, and I wish I'd bid on a few more things. Now there was some really nice, some Japanese popies on there that went for, I think, ridiculously cheap. £300-400 for the Luke Besbin and a few others. I know that a few of the guys are actually there in person picking stuff up. And that was my I thought the happy days. This is it. Things are going to, go back to normal in inverted commas. But then obviously, pandemic hit, and we kind of that CNC auction was the first test of what direction things were going in, and they have continued to soar since. I mean, I've got a little bit of a focus I've been trying to put together of the the Return of the Jedi cards with the alternative photo art. So I've got 3 of those now. So I've got the Vader, the Obi-Wan, and the Chewie, and I want to get the I think there's a Han Solo, Yoda, Luke Gunner, and the Boba Fett with the desert scene. I mean, I know those last 2 are going to be quite expensive. But the other 2, I don't think have been that highly priced in the past. I think that the Han, you can get that used to be able to get that for a couple of £100. The same with the Yoda. You got no chance now, I don't think. I mean, that Yoda, I've decided that was the one I was going to go after first. I mean, I've been looking at sold items on eBay, and you're looking at £400 for that at the minute. So it's kind of doubled in the last 12, 14 months. I mean, I had one at Farthest From, the last Farthest From. A guy was looking for about 185, and I walked off from that, and I'm kicking myself a little bit now. So I'll just keep an eye on prices. I'm on all the Facebook, and I'm listening and watching. I'm having good fun watching people sell stuff on Deal or No Deal, and yeah, it's all good. I'm just biding my time, building up a little bit of a war chest and waiting for the right moment.
So what bit of advice would you give to somebody then who's perhaps in a similar kind of situation but has kind of started to get what's the point now? I've got as much as I can without spending an obscene amount of money. Is my collecting over?
I think upgrading's a good pastime. I think certainly. I mean, for me, it's hard to track through in my head what I've upgraded and what I haven't. But I must have upgraded at least a dozen carded figures over the years, and I think that's a good way of doing it, because you're going to get back a lot of what you put into it. So if you pick something up that was, I don't know, for 300 quid, and you can sell it for 250, for 50 quid you've got a nicer carded figure. I've still got a couple of cards that have got pops that have been lifted off the back that I want to upgrade, and when the right figure pops up with that's in the right condition, and I'll buy that and I'll sell the other one on. So I just try and turn some of it over. If you're not happy with some of the stuff in your collection, just get rid of it and make the money while you can now, and save it and buy something that you do want later on.
Absolutely good bit of advice, that, Dan. Well, Dan, thank you very much for coming on the Vintage Rebellion. I've enjoyed our catch up. I really hope we can see each other soon, and I couldn't care if it was December the 22nd and we were sitting in Fordham Bridge. We're going to be outside regardless of the weather, snowing, whatever it is, but we'll all need to sit down and have a beer at some point, don't we?
Absolutely.
And thanks very much for everything you do for Generation Skywalker. I do enjoy the boxing videos. I've seen many on YouTube, and I thought, oh my god, what the hell is this rubbish? But you actually put some like academic into them. I've seen some of the videos where, he has a guy, his head moves, his arms move, his legs move, and I'm thinking, what? But at least your videos do have an educational element to them. So
I try to think about. I say fantastic a lot, so I'm trying to censor myself and make myself a little bit sharper at it. So hopefully they'll get better as we go on. So there's some more hot toys that I'm hopefully going to get in the next
awesome.
few months, and I'll do a few more of those. But I mean, if anyone's listening, we've got all the YouTube channel going now. We've got a new page. We are Generation Skywalker. You need to be a member. You need to join it, but I'm sure one of us will let you in. And we're having loads of conversations over there at the minute. So come and
awesome.
Find us.
We'll send the links out when the show's ready to go. So many thanks for giving your time, Dan. And I enjoyed your time on Generation Skywalker. So I'd love to be back on again at some point, perhaps talking about Dark Horse Comics or something next time.
Yeah, there's another book month coming up. We're talking about it, so we'll get back in touch with you.
Hello there. You may remember me from The Empire Strikes Back. Now, don't forget to hit subscribe and also click the bell for notifications.